Cindy Eckert, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am super excited to have you here. Number one, you are the first pink guest that I've ever had, and you literally are in all pink.
I came representing, Rob.
Did you come up with pink before? Who is the network marketing? Mary Kay. Did you come up with it before Mary Kay?
I don't. When did Mary Kay begin? I hope that predates me, but I am kind of old. I'll tell you, the pink, though, it is hard to find a picture of me as a child when I am not in pink. So I have loved pink my whole life. But pink, of course, is also really emblematic for me of this switch in my life from underestimated to unapologetic to really showing up exactly as who I am. And so maybe there's a touch of irreverence beneath the pink as well.
Who were you before you stepped into your pinkness? If you were to describe that person, how would you describe that person?
A misfit. That's what I would describe myself as. I think my whole life, I had a really unusual childhood. I moved every year from the fourth grade through my senior year of high school. I like to say my dad had a really good sense of humor. It was like a social experiment. Let's see what she does if we move her again. But no, really, I think I always felt that I was that new kid. I was the new kid standing on the edge of the room, really having to understand the lay of the land. Who knew that that was setting me up perfectly for what I would ultimately go on to do in my life in terms of entrepreneurship. But misfit, I don't know that I would describe myself differently today, but definitely that's how I felt.
All right. So I think that's a good place to start. You grew up ostensibly all around the world because your dad was a diplomat.
Yeah.
In what ways, and you were alluding to a few of them, but in what ways do you think that foundation was set for the entrepreneurial drive that you have today?
You get really comfortable being uncomfortable. You
Mm-hmm.
are going to be the new kid. You will not be immediately accepted. You will have to understand what the dynamic of the room is. I think all of those things are excellent skill sets for entrepreneurs. Being comfortable, feeling uncomfortable. And I think really the freedom in it for me, which only comes in hindsight, right? I certainly didn't appreciate this as a high school kid, but the freedom was I was never defined as we are when we are in that same environment really our whole lives, and we become the jock, the geek, the whatever, right? I'll go to the stereotypes of John Hughes and those movies. Like you really do become defined, and therefore I think somewhat limited. I got to be any one of those things at any time. I was constantly able to kind of float in. I wasn't defined by the stereotypes. And I think that's a real freedom of independent thinking, which is really important in entrepreneurship. You're going to probably try to do something that no one else has done. If you were confined by convention, you would actually talk yourself out of that. Many people who are more conventional thinkers will try to talk you out of that or tell you why you can't do it. But I think that independence of thinking allowed me to go there.
You know, it's interesting because Tony Robbins has said many times that I'm going to butcher this, but you'll get the idea, where our desire to remain consistent with how we define ourselves, the identity in which we have for ourselves, is one of the strongest. I'm not sure what word he used, but our need to stay within those boundaries is so powerful. So
it's a force, I think. Yeah.
It's a force. And listen, we can even say I'm a Democrat, so I'm a Republican, and I'm a mom, I'm a father. We have all these different things. So I love that you put yourself in those situations. We talked a little bit earlier when we were jumping on about living in Europe, and I have a 7-year-old, and it's just a little girl. And it's interesting because we just got to Italy. So, in the morning, a little bus pulls up, and we watch her go off to the hills of Tuscany into a little school. And it's magical. But, she, in many ways, I'm sure, was very similar to what it was like for you, because even though she's in the International School of Florence, where they speak English is the primary language, There's a ton of Italian kids.
Of course.
And, you know, so she's got all these Italian kids that they can speak English, but their preference is to speak Italian. So when they go off, they speak Italian, and she's got to figure out how to fit in that environment. But I believe that that is going to shape her for the future. And I think that you just described that that's kind of what you went through.
I have no question it will shape her. I was at the American Overseas School of Rome, and same thing, English in the classroom, Italian outside of the classroom, and really just very culturally different, right? These were kids that wanted to come probably to the States for university. And I think they figured out I was catching on when I started laughing at the jokes in Italian. My Italian wasn't, but that was the first signal. I had this cool opportunity a year and a half ago to be interviewed by a performance psychologist. Microsoft did a series called Decoding Disruptors, and they picked 7 women. And I was lucky enough to be picked in healthcare. And they said, the agreement is you have to be interviewed by a performance psychologist. And it's so funny. I can remember I went into the interview and it was all on camera. They said, what's the most insane thing you've ever done? And I said, agree to be interviewed on camera by a performance psychologist. But I said to him at the end of the interview, his name is Michael Gervais. He's awesome. And I said, what's the common thread? Now I was toward the tail end of these interviews. So he talked to a number of the other women, and he said, you're all very different people, but if there's one thing in common, you all had a lot of disruption earlier in your life. And I think in our case, we're talking about it really being physical moves into different environments. But I think that can be disruption in a variety of ways, right? For parents with kids today, how do you think about putting them into different circumstances, even if it's in the same community that you're always going to live in? How do you make sure you cause that ability to adapt very young? Because I think it is a foundation for success later in life.
Yeah, it's funny with Michael. We moved here 3 months ago from Hermosa Beach, and he was my neighbor. He was my neighbor.
Oh, no way. Okay, well, there you go.
And I know when he gets under the hood, he starts pulling on some threads. So I don't envy you. So I get that.
I was like, oh no, am I going to cry? I know he's going to make me cry.
He made me cry. And he's a wonderful soul. So you feel comfortable crying, but at the end of the day, he still can Barbara Walter you. There's no question. Right. The other thing I wanted to ask you that came to mind, a buddy of mine just exited for around 250 million. It was a big chunk of change. And we were having a conversation about, sort of how he enters different businesses. And what you said made me think about what he said, and I want to bring it up. He said, sometimes I will intentionally jump into a business in my mind and feel it. And, in my mind, I'm sort of like copying everything that the current market is doing. And then I think, how can I completely disrupt it? And how can I completely change it? Does that resonate for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I sold my business, right? And I got it back. And the fun was in that interim period. Now, look, it wasn't all fun. There were a lot of tears. I was very unhappy that they hadn't launched my product and everything else. But, when I got over rocking in the corner and feeling sorry for myself, I started imagining, well, okay, Smarty, if you got it back, how would you do it differently? Like I had a whole plan, right, of what that would look like. And the fun was now reimagining, oh, well, if I get it back, I have to have a new playbook. What's it going to be? So that totally resonates with me. I've done that actually in this business that I got back, my very own business reimagined.
Oh, I love this. Okay. So we have to lay some basic ground work for the people who are listening so they understand your journey just a bit. We don't have to get too crazy. You founded Sprout Pharmaceuticals, which redefined, disrupted long-acting testosterone for men. Now, I'll tell you, I'm 55. I got on testosterone probably a year and a half ago. And the changes that I feel after being on it, it's night and day. I am an absolutely new human being. So I completely get it.
Can I say
But
something about that, Rob? Can I
yeah,
just make a point on that? So
yeah,
listen, how absurd that we all think, we know women go through menopause, right? We get to a place in our life, our hormones fall off a cliff, and we're instantly symptomatic and we're probably mad as hell about it. So we want it
yeah,
fixed.
yeah.
Men, why would we think that men don't similarly have hormonal changes over the course of life where they would be advantaged in terms of replacing that hormone? It's so funny to me that this is like, wow, really? Like it seems so obvious when you just think about why would men uniquely not have any shifts while women do? I think that there's such advantage to understanding this. And by the way, that starts at 30. That starts really at 30. So it's not, I mean, it's a very natural sort of part of aging, but something that we should be considering what would be enhancing for that, right? And anyway, I loved
Yeah,
the space. It was my fun foray into entrepreneurship, including tackling, can you imagine me in all pink in the men's sexual health world? But
I can't. We're gonna get in. We're gonna get into that. That just seems amazing. But yes, if you think about it, I got on it because I was listening to Joe Rogan, and
yeah,
he said, if you want to feel better, just get on testosterone. If you're a man. So I went in. They did my blood. My numbers were, I was just short of like 400,
yeah,
and I said, well, what's it going to do? He said, well, if we want to get you back to, where you were when you were younger, maybe 30, that number is around 900 or 1,000. Let's
yep.
do it for a couple of months, see how you do. Within 90 days, I would say almost 3 months later, maybe a little bit longer, all of a sudden I went, oh my God,
Yeah.
energy, sex drive, focus. So, I mean,
The muscle fat balance equation, all of it is a huge mood.
it's incredible. So I love the fact that you stepped into that space. So I understand why you
Yeah.
stepped into it. What was the reason that you personally went into it for men being a
Yeah.
woman?
Yeah. Well, look, I think I wanted my whole foray into entrepreneurship was about one, why am I doing things for other people that I should be doing for myself? Right. And then secondarily, it was really culture driven. So I was driven to say, okay, I've been wildly successful in these environments in which I have been uninspired. There are other people like me. What if I were to find them, a collection of misfits, right? There's a theme here, put them together against a challenge and see what we could accomplish. It was a bit of, I wanted to see if I could create a culture, if you will, of performance in this industry that I thought was very conservative, very staid. Now, all right, that's the first piece of it. The second is, well, in what area? Well, Irish Catholic, naturally, it's going to be sex, or my mom hates when I say that, but it actually was because it's a fascinating area of science right now. It's really relatively young, a lot of our understanding, a lot of the discovery. So it was a very interesting space. And I got a beat on the only long-acting testosterone on the market at the time. So there's another one in the US today, but this was the pioneering product. And that was why I went into it. I was fascinated for all the reasons I said. I think these things seem so obvious to us. Like, of course, this would be beneficial to men. I have two big brothers. I was thinking about them. I was even thinking about the modality. I mean, my brothers can be sitting on the beach and I can be frying and I'm like handing them, suntan lotion, like, come on, put some on. And this product was a pellet. It got put in, 4 times a year. That's all. It was set it and forget it. And I'm like, this is custom designed for men. So I loved the category. I loved the product, was really a unique product. And then I was putting it against this really thesis. Could I put all of these misfits together against a mission, and what would we achieve? And that was Slate.
All right. So now we go from Slate to Sprout.
Yes.
You skipped, you changed genders and you went to women, right?
Well, in fairness, at the time, really the only category was men's sexual health. So I was in the space. I'm at all the conferences with the best researchers in the world. And there's the science emerging in terms of our understanding of what unlocks desire for women biologically. So at this point, there are 26 products for men, some form of male sexual dysfunction, be the ED, drugs, the testosterone, et cetera. 26 things to help men, not a single one for women. What we've been doing for women is when women said, hey, something's changed, like my sex drive is different, something, it's like the switch went out. We would pat them on the shoulder. We would say, oh, you're just stressed. Have a glass of wine, take a bubble bath. And it's so dismissive, right? But we didn't understand scientifically. Then brain scans emerged. Brain scan imaging of women who have the condition, which has been medically characterized since the 70s. It's called HSTD. It's got the same prevalence as ED has in men. So women with HSTD versus women with just the normal ebb and flow of desire. They're totally happy with where they are, or women who were happy, but something shifted. Expose them to erotic cues and watch their brains in a PET scan or an MRI. They light up totally differently. This was the desire discovery. And when I was faced with, oh my gosh, what is happening for women is neurochemical, it's biological. Finally, there was a possibility of solution for women too. And that is what caused me to say, okay, I can't be one of the people helping men with 26 different ways to improve their lives when women don't have a single way to improve theirs. So I sold off my profitable business in men. I went back to zero. Everybody thought I was crazy, and I took this on.
Okay. So this is really interesting because the only thing I can do is compare myself in this area. And I don't particularly remember having a loss of sex drive.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. But when the hormones kicked in, holy shit.
Wow.
I mean,
yeah.
like, so it's like, it's almost like when I first went to get glasses. It's like, you know, I mean, maybe I was squinting at the blackboard in school.
Yeah.
It wasn't perfect, but then they put the glasses on. You're like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like for me.
Yeah.
So I wonder if women, they're not entirely identifying that there's a lower drive in them, but they don't necessarily know. It's like you put a frog in a pot of boiling water. It doesn't even know. It's like that kind. Is there a little bit of that where they don't know, or were they hitting a point where you were working with women that were like, oh no, there's a problem. I need to do something.
Oh, I'll tell you what, it is the most common question in an OBGYN's office. They are well aware, and it's causing them so much stress, right? Stress about just, your sex, sort of your sex drive, your sexuality is a lot of your moxie of how you show up in this world, how you feel about yourself. So they not only have a loss of sense of self, but for sure it's causing tension in their relationships with partners they love that they are attracted to. They just never think about sex. It's really like the switch goes out. They once thought about sex, they never do anymore. And it's just not there. So they're not initiating, they're not receptive. They don't have spontaneous thoughts or fantasies. That's really the hallmark. But really, women who are treated for this condition are, I will tell you, profoundly distressed. But I do want to comment to your point. We do have learned acceptance. And what I feel right, over time, we adjust sight, right? If our sight starts to go away, okay, are we just like, you're not even almost aware? I would say more importantly with women, we've never discussed that this is outside of their control. So they start to turn on themselves. They're really thinking about like, oh my God, it's just me. Oh no, I'm a terrible wife. Oh God, if only I read 50 Shades of Grey. And what they're doing is they're putting a burden on themselves that is actually something outside of their control. So I think it's just that the conversation around women and sex is so far behind. And what I would say is, look, for 20 years, globally, you haven't been able to turn on TV or radio and not been told that sexual satisfaction is really important to your life, to your happiness, your relationships, everything else. What none of us are conscious of is the subtext of that was, if you're a man, because those were the only solutions we've been talking about. So we haven't even had this conversation yet for women. And I think when we do, it will bring forth that awareness like, oh my God, it's not just me.
It's really interesting when you think about issues in this area for a man, and you think about like erectile dysfunction. Well,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to look down there and say it ain't working. So,
Yes, that's right.
it's quite visual where it
Yes.
isn't for women. But you said something interesting, which is when they expose women to erotic cues. I would love to be in the test room and see, like,
Yeah.
what was it, Fabio? Like, was that what was happening? Did he
It's
come out?
porn.
Is that what it was? It was porn?
It was porn in some of the studies. It was partners in some of the studies because they're still like attracted, right, to their partner. It's just that their brain isn't lighting up. So this is what's so cool. Layman's like description, right? But we close all the tabs in our brain to have sex. That's how I describe it. We basically, what's happening in our brain is we're quieting it to respond to sexual cues. We're quite animalistic when we have sex. We're wired with biologic drive to procreate. We're very animalistic. For women with this condition, what you see is their brain, there's never that deactivation, right? They're never going there. They're the women lying in bed going, oh my God, tomorrow I have to do this. I have to do this. They're not quieting the information processing center of the brain to ever allow that sexual experience to take hold. It's fascinating science.
Okay, so here's how I understood it from a male perspective, that as you get older, evolutionarily, there's not a reason to have that much testosterone. Is it the same for women, where as they get older, just biologically, it just worked its way out, where there's no reason for them to have as much either?
No, this is non-hormonal, which is really interesting. And it's indiscriminate across the age band. So this will surprise you. Our average patient is 36 years old. People think of this as like sort of a postmenopausal. It's actually, our indication is premenopausal, and it's something goes off kilter. Could it be long-term use of birth control? Possibly. Is it, post childbirth? My hormones go back to normal. My hormones actually come back to where they were before, but something's been kicked off in neurochemistry. It's about a balance between serotonin and dopamine that for a massive subset of women, at some point in their life goes off balance.
Okay. So for you to be able to accomplish this goal that we're talking about, you had to get an FDA approval, and that took 6 years. How do you say it? Is it Addie?
Addie. Mm-hmm.
Addie. Okay. And how'd you come up with that name?
It's a moniker for Add Your Interest, but I will confess that it's also, to me, it was definitionally like a woman on her own terms. I loved the character Addison on Grey's Anatomy. I liked her moxie. In many ways, that was sort of her personified, right? How are you the woman on your own damn terms? And I think your sex, your sexual health and pleasure is a big piece of that. So I wanted women to have that option.
Did you ever get a chance to tell her that?
I did.
You did.
I got to tell you this story. Okay. I got into a party, like, who knows why I'm invited to this party that Kate Walsh is at. We're in New York City, and I'm like that weird fan, right? I'm standing sort of in the side, and she's in a conversation. She can tell, like, oh no, here's the super fan. And she looks over at me like, can I help you?
Right. I'm crazy lady.
A little awkward, right? I'm standing there a little too long. And I said, have you heard of female Viagra? And she looked at me like, are you insane? She just had this moment, and her friend with her was a gentleman, and he's like, this is the best conversation I've had all day already. So tell us more. And I came in and I said, look, I don't know if you've heard of it. I've recently gotten it approved. So what the media calls it, I got this product approved. It's called Addie. And she said, okay. And I said, well, I named it after your character, Addison. And she started, like, her grin got so big. She picked up her phone. She's like, I'm calling Shonda Rhimes right now.
No.
Said,
did she really?
Get on the phone. She called her, but she got her message. So we got voicemail. But yeah, how funny. And I said to her, I'm never going to see you again and have this opportunity. So I have to tell you right now. And I hope you take it as the ultimate compliment. She's like, for sure.
So let's think about this for a second, right? You had an idea for something. You You didn't give up for 6 years until you got the FDA approval. You name
Yeah.
it Addie after a Grey's Anatomy character, and then
Oh
you wind
no.
up at a
This is
party.
breaking news. I never tell that. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, then you wind up
Yeah.
at a party, and she's there. So
Right.
how much for you is woo woo and serendipity and just the universe conspiring in your favor, versus dumb luck that it happens? What's your view in that sort of?
Yeah. No, I think, look, it's way more fun to go through life believing in magic, isn't it?
Oh,
I
I
mean, it's
love
way
that.
more fun to believe in that. And I think you imagine how did I just get into this room and just have this opportunity? And do you take that opportunity when you're given that? I don't know I think there's a lot of magic in the universe, and there's so many, degrees of separation, like so few degrees of separation from you and somebody else who you would like to be in conversation with. And are you going to take every shot to get that?
That's going to be your pull quote. I love that. So much more fun going through life believing in magic. Oh, I love that. All right. Speaking of magic, I know that this question has a second follow-up question. So let me break it into two parts. First part of this question is, can you take me back to the moments that you found out that Sprouts was acquired for $1 billion with a B?
Yeah.
What did that feel like in your body when you got that news? Where were you? What was it like? Walk me through that.
I was sitting on the set of Squawk Box with the acquirer. We were both there to announce the news, but I'm going to tell you that our deal was literally just signed. So the lawyering and all of it. So I guess I knew it was going to happen. Maybe it's not exactly that moment, but we went on. So the product got approved, and there was a lot of biggest news story in the world in healthcare the day that this we broke through with Addie. 2 days later, we announced the sale for $1 billion. The then CEO of Valiant and I are sitting in the chairs at Squawk Box, and the ink isn't dry on the papers. And literally one of the anchors is in her earpiece going, is it done? Is it done? Is it done? And the countdown is starting, and she's like, it's done, go. And it was really like that. The drama of this was so crazy. And we both announced it right then. We had worked all through the night. We knew we were going to do it, but it's the last minute negotiations. I was going on no sleep. We both had agreed to all of the final terms, and the lawyers had to put the sort of final pen to paper. And they did that while we were in the seats in Squawk Box.
All right. So now, as most entrepreneurial journeys go, the sale didn't work out the way you thought.
As it turns out, especially in my line of work, it's up to you to create your own happy ending. And I like to say, pun intended.
I was gonna say, can I take the low hanging fruit, because that was really.
Who would have thought, right? That you really have what you think is the dream come true. They bought the company. It was a $2.5 billion consideration, $1 billion in cash up front. And then they shelved it, and they shelved it not because they're bad people, but because their business had, unbelievable turmoil. Not long after, really, you announce a deal, and it takes a while for all the formality of government sort of weigh in to close. And literally we closed the deal, and within a week into the deal, this company started to fall apart. And they were the darling when I sold to them. They were at $2.60 a share. They traded down into the single digits because of something that they hadn't disclosed. So they were under fire. Well, their business was kind of burning to the ground as they knew it. And this was the last thing in. The last thing they were going to do was put attention toward this. They were going to save all of the existing business. So it literally just got put on the shelf. And I'm in there, mama bear, making noise, not happy, ready to launch this product, worked so hard to get this finally for women. And then they invited me to leave.
When you had that moment and you
Yeah.
knew that it was not going the way you expected it to go,
Yeah.
how long did you give yourself, if any, the pity
Yeah.
party?
Um, so I knew I knew that I'd been invited to leave, and I had to go out and give a speech that night.
Mm,
And it was about the product, and it was a great opportunity. And it's funny, I can still look at the photos. There's a photo in a paper from that night, and I can see it. Like, I can see it all over my face, like
mm,
just haggard, right? So I was so upset by this. I mean, it's so personal, right? As an
of course.
entrepreneur, this is my baby. Um, and then I had to sort of talk myself into, they paid you $1 billion for this company. You're the founder. The good news is they're going to keep all your people. They're going to keep all your people. You need to step to the sidelines. You need to be the most vocal cheerleader, and it's in good hands. And then they fired all of my people. That's when I
Mm.
spiraled. That's when I really went into the pity party. And I can remember, so all this happened in December of 2015. And I would say the beginning of 2016 was a bad period. And I remember I went out to California. I used to live in Orange County, and that's my happy place. I went out there and I walked into a Nordstrom, and I saw this pair of like neon pink shoes, and they were Louboutin. I never had a pair. They were called Shocking Pink. That was the name of the color. I turned them over. I looked at them, and I literally had a moment, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Buy this pair of shoes, kick yourself in the ass, and go fix it." And I really that quickly, like in the beginning of 2016, in April of that year, I announced the pink ceiling, that I was going to do work to help other women disrupt. And I called the new CEO of that company and I said, "Can we have breakfast?" I went to New York City. I sat down. I said, "Give it back to me." And he said, "Are you kidding?" I was wearing those shoes. I said, "Give it back to me." And it started the conversation.
So when did you how does it work in terms of money? Did you have to pay, like, did you keep
No.
any of it? Did you have to pay it back? How does that work?
Oh, Rob, let me tell you this story. So he sold it for $1 billion in cash. They never launched it. I fought them to get it back. It ended up being a lawsuit. In exchange for dropping my lawsuit, they gave it back to me. We kept the $1 billion, and that's what I used to invest in other female disruptors today.
So you wound up getting the $1 billion.
Yes, $1 billion cash. We kept the cash, all the shareholders, and we use it today. So when I got it back for $0 up front from the company. Now that's because I wrote a really good contract. And you get smarter as you go along. I did a better deal in Sprout than I did in Slate. And it's one of my lessons, I think, for entrepreneurs, which is, so many deals will have an upfront. You'll be paid something upfront, and then there'll be a back end. It might be royalties, it might be milestone payments. That back end, how that is governed, is imperative to get right. And most of it, boilerplate language, is best efforts. A best efforts clause. That's what all lawyers are going to put in there. That company then says, we made our best efforts to try to promote this, to do whatever. Well, there's a million excuses you can hide behind best efforts, right? So having done that in my first transaction with Slate, which was a good deal, but you then as an entrepreneur, you're always like, well, wait a minute, are those the best efforts? Because my efforts would be different. When I did the Sprout deal, I had really specific performance obligations. How much money would they spend on education? How many salespeople would they have calling on OBGYNs? And they were in breach of all of those. That's what gave me my leverage.
What does it feel like to have $1 billion?
um, you know, I will say surreal. And I'm just a kid from upstate New York, right? Like, I should never have this many zeros in my bank account. But the truth of it is, the day that the cash came into the bank account, the next morning I woke up and I went to work. It's what I do. It's what I love. I think, money is a conduit. You get to choose, is it for good or for bad?
Mhm.
And for me, it's been an unbelievable conduit to do good in terms of, I care less about the things that I can acquire than the impact I can make by helping others get there. The other misfits, the other people who are overlooked, who have big ideas, who aren't, they don't fit in the traditional mold, helping them get to their dreams. That's my real joy today.
You can buy anything you want. You are one of the richest women in the world right now, right? That must, it's interesting because I don't have a billion. I don't know what it feels like, but I could imagine that when you give an example. I went today to a doctor in Italy because I noticed I was having a little less. I wasn't hearing as well as I thought. So I was thinking maybe I'm starting to get old, going deaf. I don't know what's happening. So they sucked a bunch of wax out of my ear. It turns out that's what it was, and I'm fine. And they had no interest at all in selling me anything, like no hearing aids, nothing like that. It was just a conversation. And so it got me thinking that because of the kind of medicine that's here, they just do what you need, and there's no incentive because docs aren't getting paid for it. So I wonder, when you pull out that equation out of your life where you have to work for money and it's no longer there, and you get to wake up and work solely because it means something to you.
Yeah.
That has to be an incredible feeling.
Yeah. I'm the weirdest person to talk to about this because I think I've always had, maybe your relationship with money is formed early. I mean, that's just a theory. And my relationship with money is, I will not have any. I will be poor. And that if you're capable, you need to go out and make some. And for me, that stays. So I still feel that. I still feel that need. Like, I would again kick myself in the ass if I was just sitting doing nothing. Right? Like, that's
Yeah.
not okay. I'm capable. I've got something to give back. How are you going to do it? And so I've really, I mean, in all candor, like, I've struggled with this. Like, it's been a bit daunting for me to get out of that mindset. I've told this story, but it always makes even me laugh. I work with somebody who manages my money, and he came in the last time, a little while ago, and came into the office, and he said, okay, so you live in the same house, you drive the same car. And he looked across the desk and he's like, and I'm pretty sure you were wearing that the last time I saw you. I started laughing. He's like, I don't even know what to tell you at this point. But I hope you're using it for things that make you happy. And I think for me, it has been about, like, that's really, if I make it, how will I use it? And for me, using it, the way that brings me the most joy is actually impact. It's gone. The one shift is, I think the shift is, there's a period of your life in which you need to prove it. Like, how much do I have to prove? And then hopefully you get to a point where it's, how much do I have to give? And give doesn't mean literally giving the money, but giving, what do you give of your time, of your talent, of whatever that is?
One of the things that I found interesting, I was walking down the street here the other night, and I passed a couple of restaurants because, as you know, from living in Italy, Florence is like this little, it looks like, I always tell people, they're like, what's it like? And I'm like, if you've ever seen a snow globe, it's like living in a snow globe. You know what I mean? It's got that kind of feel.
Description.
And so all these restaurants, they open at 7 or 8 o'clock. So usually right before they open, the staff, they're all sitting at the table and they're eating together. Everybody. And in doing my research for you, I noted that you have lunch together with your staff, just like they do here. Why did you decide to do that?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you for that question. I think it's one of our secrets to success. Because I didn't want death by meeting. I thought I would eliminate a lot of that, I'm busy because I'm in a meeting, I'm in a meeting, I'm in a meeting. Like, what is the real efficiency or productivity of that? And really, I felt that everyone in the company had to be on the same page. So how would I really make sure there was complete transparency? And it was have a meal together every day, sit down, break bread, talk about the challenges in the business. Everyone knows exactly what's happening, who needs help, what we're gunning for. And it created this unbelievable alignment. Never mind, it bonded us as a family. It really did. I mean, we don't solve only business challenges at the glass table. We solve, the challenges of reality TV together, and we solve those things too. But we're really bonding, and I think it's a tradition to this day. Our table just keeps getting bigger. When I built out my last office space, they said, okay, well, you're going to have a cafe. Like, you're going to have little round tables. I'm like, oh no, we all sit at the same table, and we have a table that's longer than the Last Supper. Like, it just keeps going, but it's part of who we are, and it's a company tradition. And I think that's missed, in cultures and companies, how important it is to just break bread together.
I love this. All right. So as we wrap up, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that sort of fall into the personal category.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to be weird, so just roll with it.
Right, let's do it.
What do people often get wrong about you?
Oh, that I'm super extroverted. I'm actually much shyer than they would expect.
What's one thing that you've not gotten to in your life that if you don't get to it, you'll have massive regret, but has nothing to do with business?
A successful marriage.
What an honest answer. What's something that you're currently doing? You don't love doing it. You wish you can do less of it, but right now you're doing it.
Oh, fundraising for others.
What's an unusual or absurd thing that you love? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. People would think this is crazy, but I love this.
Pigs.
You love pigs.
I do. I have 2 pet pigs. People think that's absurd.
Well, then I got to ask, do you eat bacon?
I don't, since I've gotten them. But there are moments where there might be a little bit, like in a carbonara. It's hard to pass this up. And I just say, I don't know it's there, but yeah.
If you could spend 1 month anywhere in the world, which I know you can, so where would it be and why?
Well, I'm going to need to stay over in Florence, because I really would pick that. Having spent, some of my childhood in Italy, I have such a special affection. There's just something about the minute you cross the border into Italy, it's loud, it's lively, it's hands waving. And there's something about that lifestyle that I think all of us need to adopt in some capacity for our own. So
Yeah.
I'd be bunking with you.
You got it. Are there any positions or opinions in the last few years, or it could be way back, it doesn't have to be the last few years, where you changed your minds and you said, I used to think this way about this, but I don't think that way anymore?
It's a great question. I have to think on that. What are some of the things? I mean, I think maybe around delegation in general is a constant struggle for me, of how I work my way through, how important it is that I get involved to that level of detail. I think that's a constant, I feel differently about that. What is it like to completely step out, let somebody else, take the ball and then celebrate it, even though it wouldn't be the way you'd have done it, and their own outcome in it. I guess that's probably it. I mean, it's so charged today around political opinions. I think maybe, I have a belief that you should be vocal about the things that are really important to you. And I guess now I sit and I think, do we have to be vocal about every single thing, or could we be a little more tolerant of each other? I mean, that's it, right? Advocacy is so fabulous. Like advocacy in women's health, in patients' health, like in health, I've been such a proponent of that. But sometimes you're just yelling really loud, I think, to be heard to the exclusion of any other voices.
Do you collect anything, or have you collected anything?
Well, I'm going to go back to rescue animals. I definitely collect rescue animals. I have, like, even though I really do live on the edge of downtown, people are like, oh, that's so nice. Do you live on a farm? I'm like, no, the edge of downtown. But I have a bit of a farm in my backyard, and some rescue dogs as well.
What do people never ask you, but you wish they did? They never ask me about this. They ask me about the $1 billion. They ask me about hormones. But they never ask me this question.
Can I pay for this? I had to say that. I'm just joking. That's never asked. Let me see.
That is really funny. Can I pay for this?
Nobody ever asked me that. Not anymore. I think it is, though, around help, right? Like, what can I help you with? I think people believe at this point you're in like a different, I don't need any help. I've got it. I figured it all out. That's absolutely not true, right? I'm human, and every day is just a new day and a new struggle. And I think sometimes you get into a place where nobody ever is asking you that question in the way that they once did.
Yeah. I mean, next time I go out to dinner with a billionaire, I'm going to ask if I could pay.
They won't know what to do.
We'll just totally screw them
Pattern
up. I love
interrupt.
that. Yeah, that'd be a pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more quick ones. What is your guilty pleasure?
Oh, it depends on the day, but right now, it's probably picking up phrases from Love Island, UK.
Love Island.
I mean, it's incredible to me.
Okay, I'm writing it down. Love Island, UK.
UK, of course, it has to be the UK edition. Yes, it does.
Where do you pick that up?
My niece made me watch it. I'm just going to say that first. And it was bonding for the two of us. And of course, you sit on the couch, you're 3 episodes in, and then I clicked on it for how many episodes, and it was like 36 episodes. I thought, there's no way I can go the distance with this, but then it became a challenge. So I guess that's my guilty pleasure right now, is working my way through a season of Love Island UK.
Is it too chicky, or you think I'd like it?
Oh no, it's great. It's so great. There's something for everybody.
All right, last question.
Season, I'm sure. I'll have to tell you which season I'm watching.
All right, just message me. I'd love to know. All right, last question. Let's change things up a little bit. What one question would you like to ask me?
Oh man. What was the driving force to move your daughter overseas?
I had it. I was in Hermosa. There's a school that was right behind where we were living. And one day we hear, get under the table, get under the table, get under the table. And we're like, what the hell is going on? And we find out that they're doing a shooter drill to prepare the kids that if a gunman were to came in, this is how they protect themselves. And then they were putting packs together that if there was, if anybody got shot, they were teaching the kids how to do first aid. And then the Capitol was stormed. And then Black Lives Matter burned the city down. And then. And I said, enough. I want to enjoy. My life is half over. I want to enjoy my life in a world where people are happy and eating. The biggest conversation we have here, the only fights you have are whether or not the wine is better at that place or the olive oil is better at that place, or this is where you're going to get the best cannoli. There's like all of that craziness doesn't exist. So there was a moment. And then I watched Stanley Tucci did a series called Searching for Italy, which is amazing. And I just went, you know what? It's time. It's time to make a change. And, once you make a decision, then, the universe will just line up. And so we got the right attorney to get the visa, and then we found the perfect
Great.
place with the great view and blah, blah, blah. And this is our third month.
La Dolce Vita.
La Dolce Vita. There's also La Dolce Fa Niente, which is the sweetness of doing nothing.
I love it.
sometimes that's hard, but sometimes it's good.
Yeah, it is hard, but there is like that joy, that baseline joy in Italy, that just baseline joy when you cross the border. Like I said, you feel it immediately, is about, I think, living life with an attitude of gratitude. There's nothing better than that.
Cindy, you're incredible. You're the nicest, most fun billionaire I've ever spoken to. I love this. This was so much fun. So, any final words, suggestions, or an ask for people listening?
I hope they'll follow me at Cindy Pink CEO. I like to help. So if people have particular, but they have to ask me a specific question. Can't just say like, hey, I want to pick your brain. Like, what's the specific question? DM me, and I'd love to be helpful however I can.
I love that. I usually send people the Silence of the Lambs image when they ask, like, you remember that scene in Silence of the Lambs where he like saws the guy's head off and he's like, do you remember that with Ray Liotta? I usually send them that. It's the worst. It's the worst message ever. Can I pick your brain? No. Garbage in, garbage out. Ask me a question.
That's right. And a specific one.
Make it specific.
Yeah,
I love it.
I promise you, if you ask me a specific question, I'll answer it.
Cindy, this was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me on. What a blast.